with a mission to help build safe and inclusive XR and spatial computing ecosystems. Today is a really important day for me, and I would say it's an important day for XR and spatial computing industry. As the world moves fast and adopts immersive technologies such as XR and AI and brain-computer interfaces and 5G, I'm here with a purpose. I'm here to fulfill my responsibility and share with you all and the work that many experts and my own team at XRSI has put together. I'm here to talk about privacy and give to the tech industry a toolkit that will help us all understand and fulfill our shared responsibility. Privacy. It's obvious that it's on the top of the mind for technology companies and consumers. Almost every prominent CEO has made public statements affirming their commitment to privacy. Consumers and legislators have sharpened their interest in big tech's use of data, and we've seen many privacy laws get introduced, such as General Data Protection Regulation, California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. We know that the big tech firms continue to review and refine and clarify their data practices for the benefit of their consumers, and yet there are these same companies end up in the hot waters, get fined millions of dollars, and then get special invites to congressional hearings. So if the intentions are there, what's missing? We at XRSI got together with many interdisciplinary experts and looked into the very question through the lens of XR and spatial computing. We discovered that immersive domain needs a common understanding around privacy with a simplified language that speaks to everyone inside and outside of the organization. Basically, what we established is this: privacy is a shared responsibility. With the same sense of this shared responsibility in 2019, we started a partnership with OpenAI Cloud in Santa Clara, California. A lot has changed since then. The world, as we know, has gone virtual and now moving rapidly to the immersive domain. Just last week, we saw Burning Man, and we saw Venice-related festival, a festival in Venice. All of that moving to virtual reality. There are a few companies that are already getting ready to launch their augmented reality glasses. So we know that things are changing. However, what has not changed is our commitment and the original sense of ethical responsibility. We continue to pursue our mission with our partners and contributors, and strategically, we select these partners, such as OpenAI Cloud, by looking at the collective goals and aligning our collaborative efforts towards a strong purpose. Those of you who don't know much about XRSI, we are a 501c3 worldwide nonprofit, of course, a standard developing organization that promotes privacy, security, ethics in immersive domain. XRSI's mission is to help build safe and inclusive experiences so that XR stakeholders are able to make informed and pragmatic decisions. XRSI does this by discovering novel cybersecurity, privacy, and ethical risks and propose potential new solutions to mitigate them. XRSI, being the first such global effort, is uniquely positioned to provide impartial, practical information about XR and spatial computing related risks and opportunities to individuals, corporations, universities, government agencies, and organizations worldwide. Our goal is to remain unbiased, ethical, and consistent with our mission. We have to be extremely careful about how we carry out this mission, and the reason is obvious. If we allow influence to be bought by money, the highest bidder could manipulate these standards, influence key decision, and determine the direction of XR domain. Nobody wants that. We especially don't want that for privacy and immersive technology, this kind of thing to happen. With recent antitrust congressional hearings and the launch of new VR platforms backed by social media giants and upcoming release of various forms of AR tech, we have a lot to worry about when it comes to privacy in XR and spatial computing domain. For the past few months, we have been hard at work putting together a solution to these challenges, looking for that common understanding, outlining a simplified language, and building a set of guidelines that will help navigate the uncharted territories of these emerging domains. As a result, today, I'm really glad to announce the fruits of this community effort led by XRSI and its liaison organization, OpenAR Cloud, University of Michigan, and Georgia Tech University. It's an honor for me to launch today the XR Safety Initiative's XRSI Privacy Framework, available now for download via www.xrsi.org. This is truly a silver lining for the industry, as XRSI is leading the way as the very first standard developing organization listed at ANSI, American National Standard Institute for XR domain. XRSI, together with its partner, has taken privacy very seriously and takes all these issues into account to create processes and mechanisms to put together an entire framework to proactively anticipate and address the challenges in the emerging technologies. At this point, I would really like to thank the very many experts in the industry, academia, government, who contributed their thoughts to the creation and review of this framework. We especially acknowledge our liaison organization, OpenAR Cloud, University of Michigan, and Georgia Institute of Technology for the technical insight and active contribution in this effort. For the past few months, this amazing group of experts met each week, provided crucial input and data points, along with their diverse perspectives on privacy to build this framework. As we coped with the elevated levels of mental stress, and myself included, that this year 2020 has brought along, the timing of this community effort underscores and highlights the urgency of this privacy framework. So, what is the XRSI Privacy Framework? This framework is a free, globally accessible baseline rulebook. It has a layered structure outlining 4 focus areas, 14 functions, and a set of 125 controls approximately. These controls define potential problems and provide solutions. Most importantly, though, they are a collective model to understand our shared responsibility for privacy. The goal is to help individuals and organizations address a complex set of privacy needs, enabling more innovative and effective solutions to improve outcome of privacy in the extended reality and spatial computing domain. The XRSI framework sets a baseline set of standards, guidelines, and best practices. This is regulation agnostic. However, it incorporates privacy requirements drawn from General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST guidance, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Acts, FERPA, Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, COPA, and American Disability Act, and many other evolving laws. The framework is designed to adapt and include novel requirements as new regulations come into effect. With an introduction to privacy expectation, this framework takes a novel approach to privacy. While understanding the user privacy expectation is quite challenging, it is significantly important in immersive domain. The expectations in immersive environments can serve as the basis for a layered approach to privacy in creating a more trustworthy experience where data privacy information can be presented as a multi-layer construct. The three levels of privacy expectation outlined in the XRSI Privacy Framework are minimum. The minimum type is what people would tolerate if something must happen. Something is essential to fulfill a need. There is not much of a choice. Here is this must indicates the stronger obligation that should or ought. The minimum type is critically determined by a lack of options and driven by generally legal compliance mandates. If I were to say, it would be like kind of check the box, like providing a privacy policy would be at the very minimum. Then there is the desired. Compared to the other types, the desired type has an affective dimension that focuses on feeling. The desired type is what people should or ought to happen given their investment. And investment can be in terms of effort, money, loyalty, etc. Ideal. The ideal type is what people ideally want to happen. It's similar to that desired level of privacy. However, the desired level of privacy is an ideal internal state at the moment, at any moment, and people evaluate it, achieved level of privacy against this desired level of privacy. The framework takes into consideration the novel risks identified by XRSI in the Cyber XR Coalition Standards for Immersive Technologies published in May last year. Within that standard, there is a particular section for trust and safety, where we categorized very many risks into 5 major categories. While this list is continuously evolving, it can still be used because there are several outlined risks, such as psychological, human risks, legal risks. These risks can still be used to perform a customized risk assessment depending on the platform, the technology in use, and its impact. And of course, this is an evolving domain, and this list will continue to evolve. One of the most significant development within the framework is the focus area called inform. In a world where everyone in XR and spatial computing domain is looking for a killer app, we want to understand what informed consent means in the era of constant reality capture. So we wanted to understand this, and once you download this framework and review this framework, you'll notice the sub-function, the function that clearly addresses this very, very question, outlining the responsibilities organizations have around communicating information related to privacy risks. We do this via context, choice, and control. Another key addition is child safety, introducing age-appropriate design requirements for minors and awareness activities for parents and guardians. The framework has controls that identify, assess, and manage privacy risks related to special data type consideration, such as biometrically inferred data. Biometrically inferred data, BID, is a collection of data sets that is a result of information inferred from behavior, physical or psychological biometric identification techniques, and other nonverbal communication methods. Prime examples of biometric identification techniques that potentially contribute to BID, biometrically inferred data, are facial recognition. We're all way too familiar with that and the consequences that it brings along. Fingerprint verification, iris scanning, basically now turning into what we call is the gaze data, retinal analysis, voice recognition, and very many more. And as you can see, while this is not an exhaustive list, this is just a sort of example of what exactly could be inferred from just your eyes or gaze. So anyhow, the framework emphasizes another key aspect, which is prevention. Prevention and not just protection, including, so this would include things like content moderation, proactive actions to preserve privacy, differential privacy, decentralization, de-anonymization, those type of requirements. There has never actually been a time where a security or a privacy framework actually included mitigating things like harassment, bullying, but in the immersive domain, it is so important. In fact, I myself have been subject to some of these awful things, and I can attest to the fact that in the immersive domain, it really has a much more deeper impact on a human psyche. So in a world where seeing is no longer believing, deterrent activities are necessary to prevent and mitigate harm. Because once we see something, it has an impact. And in immersive environments, just like I said, the impact is way much graver than on a 2D screen. Another novel, but not a new, necessarily completely new approach, is this human-centric privacy by design. To get there, and why I say it's not entirely new, is because to get to this approach, we took Anne Covington's 7 principles of privacy by design and infused it with human-centric design principles outlined in the CyberXR Coalition's trust, inclusion, and accessibility model, which is basically trust, inclusion, and accessibility. Human-centric privacy by design is now baked into the XRSI framework. And that leads to transparency, accountability, and trust, and absolute necessity in spatial computing and XR ecosystems. So to sum it up, we have 4 focus areas: assess, inform, manage, and prevent. And then there are 14 corresponding functions where you have assessment and mapping. I mean, you definitely got to know what kind of devices you have, what kind of risks are you taking. This is more like, creating kind of like an inventory of things. You got to know who are your audience, which kind of jurisdiction are you dealing with. If you're dealing in, if you're working with EU data subjects, then you have to comply with GDPR, and things like that are taken into consideration. Then there is the risk assessment in the assess focus area, where you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can apply the XRSI CyberXR Coalition's trust and safety list of risks and actually conduct a thorough risk assessment. You can apply the laws and regulations that you're obligated to, and really figure out what kind of a risk organizational-wide are you taking. The most important one, and actually my favorite one, where, part of the very there was a proper gap that we try to address that is in the immersive domain, is this inform part where, we talk about informed consent, but what does that mean? So we talk about context and having a choice, facilitating that choice to people, where people feel that they have a choice, and it's not just to check the box and, a bunch of your web cookies, pop up or something like that. Then control, allowing people to actually have some sense of control over their data and be able to deny, deny sharing the data. Child safety, as I earlier mentioned, is an area that personally myself and several other experts feel very passionate about, and I'm sure you do, with 1.5 billion people moving online and now even exploring these virtual realms. It is really important for us to have explicit guidelines, a strong stand as to what is safe for children and what's not. And most of it, we have to have preventative measures such as age-appropriate designs when we're talking about these immersive technologies. Within manage, you have awareness and training, which can be used to mitigate risks and manage risks. Monitoring and review, like abuse reports, and monitoring if somebody wants to exercise their privacy rights, how to facilitate them. Reviewing data processing ecosystem, what is going on with that. And then, of course, earlier I mentioned the special data type consideration, which includes biometric data, gaze pose, all these other inference, biometric infer data, is those type of considerations, and what kind of controls must be in place. And finally, prevent. And I did talk about prevent earlier, where we have to be proactive. Once something is introduced, let's say, to a child, you can't really unsee it. So it basically outlines the requirements for those prevention mechanisms. The toolkit that contains a PDF document and an Excel sheet as well, detailing about approximately 125 controls. It looks something like this. So this is an example of child safety, and I was talking about, how we have to have awareness for parents and guardians that what could be the risk to minors, because some of us are privileged to have technical backgrounds or be tech savvy, but a lot of the parents have no idea. There are kids that are like 7 years old and 7 years old and 15 years old and 12 years old, and they are being put into VR, and we've already we don't know what the consequences are. And when these kids talk to strangers in virtual reality, there is a risk of all kinds of activities, pedophilic activities taking place, people grooming the children in these environments. Whether the kids might be there for playing games, but we know that there are bad elements out there, and those kinds of risks have to be mitigated proactively. So as you can see, there is this running sort of list of controls that any organization can adopt and actually start mitigating some of these risks in immersive domain. So XRSI Framework is going to continue the development, and we're going to continue our future work. This framework can be downloaded now, and this document remains in what we call is the RFC period, request for comments, until the end of this year. Well, you are welcome to add comments, provide feedback, suggest additional controls, and make money until 1st of January 2021. Yeah, I did say make money. Let me explain. XRSI has committed to funding the further development of these 125 controls by soliciting submission from the community. So I welcome your submissions to each of the corresponding control items. Each of the approved submission, if we adopt 80% or above of one particular submission, will be added to the next version and will pay out $100 per adopted submission at the beginning of year 2021. In order to make this commitment a reality, we've put together a set of interdisciplinary subject matter experts who will evaluate the submissions and provide collective judgment on these RFC submissions. These are some of the individuals who also donated their valuable time to bring this framework to life and remain committed to building privacy in XR and spatial computing. So where does this all lead us? What does the future look like? Some of the future projects that we will undertake are geolocation and geoprivacy, standardized semiotic labels for XR, adoption and enforcement of this framework, of course, data protection impact assessment for spatial computing and XR, analysis of dark patterns and their impact on trust in spatial computing and XR, XR data classification framework, and where we will continue XRDCF effort that we started in 2019. One of these immediate undertakings, in fact, is exactly that, is XRDCF. And so it's worth mentioning that this project, where we engage with XR organizations and the community to establish what we are going to call is the XR data classification scheme. And because we know there is this inference data, there is a lot of sensitive data, there's metadata that can actually be put together to derive personal information. We have a lot of work to do. And I encourage any interested organization or individuals to get in touch with us and get involved. Back when we first announced our partnership with OpenAI Cloud in the May of 2019, I felt that part of many, and myself included, many of these voices were unheard in XR. But with the launch of the XRSI Mission, this framework, I feel a sense of relief. Our collective voices now will no longer be unheard. It is time to demand privacy as a human right. And XRSI, along with its partners, is here to do just that. So get engaged. Together, we can build a privacy-conscious community, inform others of privacy risks and mitigating solutions, create accountability, demand transparency, and share our collective knowledge with the XRSI Privacy Framework. This is a significant step for all of us, and I encourage you all to join me and share this effort widely in your network. And lastly, with that, I'm just going to leave you with this quote: privacy is like oxygen. It is invisible and easy to ignore until it's taken away. With that, I will take some questions. And I see, I hope you guys can hear me. I see that there is some question. And Trevor, the comment, this document is full of information. Yes, there is a lot of work that went into creating this toolkit. And earlier panel discussed about these aspects. We had to think about all these aspects that are like accessibility, inclusion. So far, I myself have been a security director. I actually helped Linden Lab, which is the maker of the oldest existing virtual world called Second Life. I helped them adopt a similar security framework, which was NIST cybersecurity framework. And during this time, I noticed that none of these security frameworks, as I was looking for one, address these aspects. They don't address a human-centric aspect. They also don't address accessibility. So it was remarkable in fact, a huge learning for myself to see how we can actually bake these things into safety controls, security controls, or privacy controls. And I'm really proud the way it has come together. And our next steps are going to be really looking at it from the cross section of all these other technologies like XR, like brain-computer interfaces, human-machine interaction. All of this is going to hopefully help us drive that human-centric privacy by design aspect. And I'm looking at the question. You're speaking with many clients who are starting to think about XR, and yes, please. This is why I said the silver lining, because here's what I see. There's a lot of, if I may be bold to say, bitching and moaning that goes on in the industry about, we need to do this, or, oh my God, somebody is combining the ID with the headset, or, all of this is happening, but we need actions. And you can only imagine, it's a global pandemic. People have children's at home to school. People have so many needs. However, if the community felt so compelled, OpenAI Cloud felt so compelled to actually bring this to life. In fact, Colin had approached initially, like, this is time, and I concurred. It is time that we actually take some action to put this. I wouldn't call it put this rule set, like a baseline, like draw a line in the sand and then continuously evolve over it. So hopefully our efforts would now guide the industry to not just shrug away or not just check the box, but really think about the user's privacy expectations. What do I want from privacy? What do I want from a platform? What do I want from an immersive experience? All of this is definitely detailed out in all this framework. It still, I would say, is in kind of the early stages, and there is a lot of work that needs to happen still subsequently. And that's why the whole commitment to donate to $12,500, and we'll continue to solicit more support and donate even more money to this work, because this is just absolutely imperative. We can no longer look away, and this is probably our last ditch effort to prevent from human literally becoming that part of that little matrix and being inside a computer. We have to absolutely do whatever is needed. And let me check. I don't see any questions in the chat. Oh, up in the Q&A tab. Taylor, do you mind posting those in the... I see in the published. Okay. Is XRSI planning to run webinars on individuals group who want to learn more? Yes, that is precisely the plan. So as we continue to develop and solicit feedback, we are going to run webinars, and the schedule is something that I'm going to work with our project managers for this framework. Of course, my co-chair Colin and Ryan Wagner and Joe Jerome. We are going to put together the evaluation guidelines, which is not out yet. As you can imagine, this was such a sprint for us. So the most important thing was, let's get these guidelines out. And now we're going to, prepare those supporting mechanisms, help people out as to how to adopt this within a, let's say, smaller organization. Many things are going to come out of this. In fact, we are already working with another organization, Kaleidoscope. So we are trying to help develop a safety and privacy guide for them, which would be inspired by this toolkit. So there are several organizations that have already been engaged. And I anticipate that this would be widely and welcomed in the industry. So we'll continue to provide guidance. The expert panel that we put together, I would say the expert and diverse. I was just really proud as I handpicked all these experts, and suddenly I see like, wow, this is such an interdisciplinary, where people are from data science, BCI. So we're going to bring them regularly into these webinars and try to provide guidance. April, do you have to be very knowledgeable about spatial computing to participate in the submission? The truth is no, actually. In fact, we have had participants that are students that have absolutely no idea. In their first meeting, they're like, hey, what is XR? And so I direct them to the standard definitions that we prepared. And but then they ask, what is spatial computing? What is OpenAI Cloud? So we direct them to. So even if you're a student and you're not technical, it is really, really important to participate, and especially if you are curious. One of the most important aspects that, April, you know it really, really well, is that human-centric. So it was interesting to see how we can infuse inclusion into privacy, because otherwise it's just talked about. It's never really is a part of the safety mechanism or a privacy control. But this time, we actually made sure that this happens. So coming soon, and yes, I encourage everybody to absolutely take part in this effort and help us build this further. And Trevor, there is a mailing list that we are building, so you can certainly sign up for updates so that XRSI can send you out these updates whenever these webinars are happening. Most of our communication, we refrain from Facebook, but we always lean on LinkedIn or mostly Twitter. Twitter is like probably the best, the most real-time communication tool for us, where we announce things and put these things out. We're not super chatty on Twitter, but when we do communicate, it is for a really greater purpose and really important stuff that needs to be said. So I would definitely look out for that. And I would say Twitter ID is xrsi.org. And my Twitter ID is Kavya Pearlman. Yes, just like Alina said, there is a lot more work in the pipeline that's happening. In fact, I would like to mention the next iteration is going to specifically focus on not specifically, but definitely going to have a heavy emphasis on human-machine interaction. This is something Alina and I have discussed over and over, is we're still not quite able to wrap our head around what it means for an artificial intelligence agent to be embodied with such profound data that you can no longer tell the difference between whether it is a human avatar or an AI avatar. And when that happens, and this is already happening with some of the research coming out from Facebook, their embodied AI can accurately detect a fire alarm signal and where exactly is it in the entire room, because they can, of course, map the room using AR and do this. So absolutely an important aspect to consider is, what does it mean for humans now that we start to interact with AI in virtual reality or augmented reality settings? Another big thing that this framework is going to support, which Colin earlier mentioned, OpenAI Cloud is rolling out testbeds worldwide, or testing these and working with various governments and international entities. So when these testbeds roll out for spatial computing, privacy, as OpenAI Cloud's one of their major core principles, is going to remain as the centerpiece of it all. And that's another thing that kind of drove the urgency to build this, is because we are moving fast developing these technologies, but we need to take privacy into consideration. And this toolkit basically allows us. And just today, it's available for download. You are welcome to reach out to myself at kavya@xrsi.org. If you're a media person, you're welcome to reach out to both of our communication personnel, Alina Kudlubsky from OpenAI Cloud and Marco Maniano. They are, taking in journalist questions and sharing as much communication as possible, because this is for the industry. It is not about me. It is not about XRSI. It is not about OpenAI Cloud. It is for all of us. It is for the humankind. We need these technologies. As we have seen with COVID-19, we are going to see more and more of this stuff happen with the climate change emergencies. We're going to need technologies that allow us to safely be present with other people without having to be in the physical proximity. So absolutely a mandate, an imperative that we had to get ahead of. And there is apparently any other questions? Let's see, new questions. Okay. Taylor, it seems like no more questions here, but yeah, I mean, everyone is welcome to, email us afterwards as well, because there is a lot of information in this toolkit. Ingest it, understand it. If the one thing that you, as a completely non-technical person, or as a technical person, one thing you can do, you can start from the zoomed out perspective of like these 4 pillars, which is assess what risk are you taking, assess what kind of a legal environment are you operating in, assess your devices, where are those, then inform, which is, it is not just a legal duty, but it should be a moral and ethical responsibility to inform your individuals what the hell are you doing with their data. And when I say data, it's not just PII, it's not just personal data. There is a lot more that can become personal, which is not currently defined as personal. And that's something that we specifically try to go after, because that area of responsibility is upon the organization. Even if no legal framework says so, it is all of the industry experts that got together. We have established it is an organization that's dealing in XR. It's their responsibility to protect this data, to understand what this sensitive data could do to the human beings, and to inform human beings that this is what could happen to you when you step into these immersive environments. Inform people that you're taking this data and ingesting into your AI algorithms, which is something that just last week, actually, Microsoft updated their terms of services to indicate exactly that. However, we are yet to see it from the rest of the organizations accepting and admitting that they are ingesting pattern recognition and all of this. So I believe I have had such an honor and privilege to launch this here today. Thank you, OpenAI Cloud. Thank you, John-Ray, Colin, Alina. Such a great team. Had a really tremendous time working with you. And thanks, Taylor, for all the effort and bringing this together. Thank you, everyone.